So as we know that today's webinar is all about Transfer of Property Act, and transfer of property can be executed by five most common methods. And of course, that is sales agreement, gift deed, will, release deed, relinquishment deed, or leave and license agreement, or the mortgage, exchange deed, or partition deed. So these are some of the five to six common methods through which a property can be transferred from one person to another person. And that is what we are going to discuss today. For the starters, this entire session is being divided into two parts. First one is the drafting part, drafting of all these deeds and documents. And the next part will be the execution part, which is the most important part to give effect to a transfer of property from one person to another person's name. So now let's start with the drafting part. Drafting all these documents which we are talking about, these are called as conveyance deeds. What is meant by conveyance? Conveyance is just nothing but to convey the rights and title or rights or interest of one of a person in a property to another person. So that is conveying or transferring the rights to other person's name. And therefore, all these sale agreement, gift deed, release deed, relinquishment deed, or leave license agreements, these documents come under the purview of conveyance deed. And that is what we're going to study today. Yes, so as I said, the drafting of this document should be very, very important. On a practical note, all these agreements come under the purview of commercial agreements, and the language and the tone of the agreement should be very clear and precise, and it should be unambiguous. What is meant by unambiguous? Whatever language you choose to write in the draft should not have more than one meaning. As in, the draft of your document should not have more than one interpretation or multiple interpretation. It should be very clear, specific, and very, very precise. It is not very important to use very hi-fi words of English language. It is very important that you write the draft in such a way which anyone can understand, which is very, very clear and precise. Okay, so as you can see over here, there's a code that always an agreement or a rough draft is like a canvas for a lawyer. So the painter should be very clear in his thoughts. He should know what are the facts of the case, what are the facts of the parties, the identity of the parties, and what is the transaction about. And accordingly, the draft is then drafted in a piece of paper. Okay, so particularly what we are going to describe is how to draft an agreement. More or less all these conveyance deeds, whichever we have discussed right now, sale deed, gift deed, will or release deed, or relinquishment deed, leave and license agreement, exchange deed, partition deed, mortgage deeds, mostly all of these follow a similar and same kind of pattern. Obviously, the story is always different, but the main pattern, or what do you say, the canvas is almost similar. So what I would like to do is I would like to divide the agreement into four parts. So whenever you look at any agreement, let's say, for example, we are looking at a sales agreement. I think most of you must have seen a sales agreement or drafted or read a sales agreement. So you must have noticed that the agreement is divided into four parts. First one is the preamble. Second one is the recitals. Third part is the clauses part, which is the most important part. And then fourth is signing and sealing it. Okay, so according to Indian Contract Act, all these agreements, all these conveyance deeds are is like a contract. It's a legally enforceable agreement. So from out of all this, what do we derive? We derive that whenever a agreement is happening between two people, or a transfer of property is happening between two parties, it is very, very important that both the parties agree on the same thing. That is, there must be a consensus between both the parties. And then only, I think, the transfer of the property can be effected, right? Of course. So now these are the four parts, and and then I shall introduce you to each and every part. Very, very small aspects, very important aspects we're going to cover, because there is a lot to cover in this 45 minutes, and there's a lot to talk about. So first of all, preamble is nothing but the head of the agreement. That is the first part of the agreement, where the name, where the date of the agreement is mentioned, where, on which date the agreement was executed. That date is very important. And of course, the place is also very, very, very important. So if there is any dispute regarding the agreement, we know that what is the jurisdiction of the agreement, and the limitation period. So through date and through the place, we can know the most important part of the agreement, and that is these two. Then comes the name of the parties, of course. So if there is a buyer, if there is a seller, there is no issue. There is one buyer, there is one seller. So the name of the parties, address of the parties, PAN card, Aadhaar card numbers are all mentioned in this part. So there is no problem. But what if there are more than one buyer and more than one seller? So if there are three buyers and three sellers to one transfer, how will you address those parties? Of course, it is very, very important that you should number the parties correctly. So if there are six parties, the first three are sellers and the rest of the three are buyers. So you should number them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then the first part, the first three will be party of the first part, which should be clearly mentioned. And the rest of the part, the second half, are the parties of the second part. And it should always be clearly mentioned that what the first part is going to do in that agreement. Of course, the first part is the seller. So party of the first part are called as the sellers. And similarly, the party of the second part are known as the buyers. This is the most important part where you know who are the parties and what are their identities and what are their addresses. All right, so this is the preamble part. Then comes the recital part. Recital is nothing but the story so far. Recitals are nothing but the story, or you can say the background of the parties, how they have come together and how this transaction came into effect. So the story has to be written in the second part of the agreement, the summary or the history of the parties with each other. So if we look at a sale agreement, it is very important to mention that how the property was acquired by the buyer, as in the title should be clear and it should be conveyed to the purchaser. Actually, that is, the purchaser should know where the title of the property was derived from, whether it was a self-acquired property, whether it was a gift, whether it was inherited, or whether it was exchanged, or whether it was partitioned. So in this way, we know where the title of the property was derived. And always these recitals are starting with this word known as whereas. So whereas A is a bona fide allottee or the owner and in the possession of so-and-so property, and he is a bona fide member of so-and-so society. He has acquired this property through so-and-so person, and the previous person has acquired the property from the buyer, from the builder. So here the chain of the agreement should be mentioned, as in the property was first built up by the builder, then it was transferred to the first buyer, then the first buyer then transferred this property to the second buyer, and now the second buyer is going to transfer this property to the third buyer. So this present agreement is between the second buyer and the third buyer. So in this way, you have to make sure and ensure that the entire story of the previous sale agreement of the same flat is mentioned in the sale agreement. It is very, very important. And mostly 99%, whatever dispute happened is because of this title, whether the title is clear or not. On this basis only, the dispute are taking into place in future. So it is very important that you should know as a draftsman, as a legal draftsman, that you have all the chain agreements. Whether it is mortgaged, you should also know whether it is mortgaged or not, whether the flat is mortgaged or not. Of course, even if it is mortgaged, it can be sold by the agreement between the banks and the buyers and the sellers. That is all different thing. But whatever truth is there, you should write in this recital part. So it is very important, as you know, who are the buyers, who are the sellers, why the sale transaction came into effect, and also so the summary and the history is basically in this recital part. So as I said, this pattern is followed in sale agreement also, in release deed also, in relinquishment deed, in gift deed, and all these conveyance deeds. So that was the second part, which is now complete. Now comes the third part, which is the most important part. As I discussed earlier, that the parties should have a consensus with each other, as in they should agree upon one same thing. One certain thing should be agreed between all the parties. And through that consensus, all these clauses are drafted. So first, whatever happens is, first you negotiate, then you come across certain things which both the parties are agreeing upon, and then you draft the document. Of course, the main transaction should be written. What is the transaction about? Is it a sale? Is it a gift? Is it a will? Not will. Sorry, will is only executed by a single person. There is no consensus with any other person. So release deed, relinquishment deed, all these transactions should be mentioned in this agreement. What are the rights and obligations of the parties, as in what are the rights of the sellers, what are the rights of the buyers, when the title is going to get transferred, what are the conditions precedent, as in whenever a property is transferred, what are the conditions which both the parties should follow before the transfer is happening, and then what are the conditions which are to be followed after the transfer is happening. What are the damages if, whatever the if one of the parties default in making the payment, or one of the parties default in performing the contract, what are the damages which can be compensated. For that also these clauses are mentioned. So these are known as the operative clauses. So mostly in an agreement, these are very normal type of agreement which we are talking about, because these are most common agreements. So whether it is sale agreement or any other, you will find operative clauses, which are the most important clauses. And there are also known as boilerplate clauses, but that comes to the senior level discussion. So right now, we'll just concentrate on what the operative clauses are for. Then, of course, comes the force majeure, dispute resolution, duration, representation, and warranties. These are some kind of clauses which you should mention in any type of agreement. What happens if there is a non-performance of the contract? How are you going to resolve the dispute? Are you going to go to a court of law? Or you are going to opt for arbitration or conciliation? What is the duration of the agreement? As in, till what time the agreement should be complete? As in, when the payment should be complete? So all those type of clauses should be mentioned over here. Representation and warranties. This you must have learned in Sales of Goods Act. Of course, whenever you are going to sell a property, whether movable or immovable, you should represent the facts of the property correctly. And what do you guarantee from the property? Not guarantee. You can say a warranty. Or what do you think that the property is all about? You have to just portray the facts of the property in a truthful way to the buyer. So these are the clauses. This completes the third part of the agreement. So what have we completed? First, we have completed the preamble part. Then we have completed the recitals part. Then we have completed the terms and conditions part, which is also known as the operative clauses part, which both the parties are legally binding to. Yes, so this word legally binding is also very important. If you have mentioned any type of operative clause in your agreement, where you have mentioned the rights and obligations of the parties, where you have put up force majeure, dispute resolution, or indemnity type of clauses, then it is very, very clear that both the parties have a legal intention to bind each other in this legal contract. As in, if any of the parties make a default on this, then of course you can specifically enforce such type of agreement. So whenever you are drafting the operative clauses, you should be very careful while drafting all these documents. So these are the points which you should mention in all these agreements. So now we are typically talking about the sales agreement. So when a property is being sold to one person to another person, there is a stage through which this goes, and there is a stages of documents which are being executed. So it is very important. The first stage, third and fourth stage. So in first, third and fourth stage, you execute the legal documents. Okay. So first of all, there is an MOU which is being drafted. MOU is nothing but you are making sure that both sides of the parties are very, very serious towards this transaction. As in, the MOU are not supposed to be legally binding. They are just an understanding between the two people. There is a lot of confusion between what is the difference between MOU, agreement to sell, and a sale agreement. You, as a legal draftsman, as a lawyer, you should know this difference very, very well. So once a party is intending to sell the property, and when a party is intending to purchase the property, there is always a down payment which is happening in that scenario. So for that, always an MOU is executed. But I have seen there are so many MOUs which are nothing but a legal, they culminate into a legal draft or a legal agreement. Whereas MOU is not supposed to be legally binding towards each other, binding both the parties in that MOU. It is just a piece of paper. And once the stage once the stage is passed, once the MOU stage is passed, and when you come on the third stage, the MOU can be torn off. So the difference of MOU and agreement to sell and a sale deed just comprises of the perfect legal words which you inculcate in these drafts. So as a lawyer, you should know what to put in MOU to bind the contracts, whether to bind or not bind the contracts, and what to put in agreement to sell, where you have to bind both the parties in that contract. We will discuss what to include and what not to include. It's just that first it is the MOU stage. Then again, certain negotiations do happen between the parties as to the part of the payment, as to the part of the loan, the mortgage loan, or anything. If there is only if the house is mortgaged, then how to go about the entire procedure. The negotiations still happen after the MOU. Then comes the agreement to sell. Agreement to sell and sale deed again have both have a very very big difference. So when I was studying in my law school period, so what our professors used to say is that agreement to sell is something which is going to happen in future, is some kind of promise which has to be completed in future, and sale agreement is that the promise is complete. As an agreement to sell is kind of an engagement or the courtship period, and the sale agreement is marriage. So now you know the difference between the two, where agreement to sell is just a promise to transfer a property in future at a certain period, at a certain point of time, after the buyer has paid in installments or whatever the time period they have decided between each other. Unless the consideration is paid, the property will not be transferred. So over a period of time, the consideration will be paid, and over a period of time, the property will then be transferred sometime in future. So that is known as agreement to sell. But what is sales agreement? Sales agreement is that the promise has been, the consideration has been delivered, the consideration has been received by the buyer, by the seller, and the property is transferred. As in, the title of the property is transferred in the name of the buyer. So this is the difference between the two, and both the documents are very very important. Why both the documents are important? Because obviously you need a legally binding agreement to rely upon and say that yes, we are entering into an agreement, and both the parties have promised to perform their part of the contract, and therefore agreement to sell is very important. Even when even when a property is mortgaged with a bank, it is very important to show that the property is mortgaged and it is written in the agreement to sell, and then only you receive an NOC from the society. So unless it is written in the agreement to sell that the property is mortgaged and there is an agreement between the first bank and the second bank, the buyer and the seller, the society is not going to give you the NOC to transfer the said flat. And therefore, both these documents are very important. Okay, what has to be registered between the two? It depends upon the Stamp Act in which state you are. Of course, this type of agreement has to be registered before the sub-registrar. So the registration part will come under the execution part. So we'll discuss what has to be registered before the sub-registrar. So this is the MOU part, negotiation, agreement to sell, execution of the sale agreement, and then after the document is registered with the sub-registrar, you have given all the deeds and documents to the society, then the transfer will be complete. So these are the 5 stages in which the entire sale will be complete. There is a difference between MOU, as I said, agreement to sell, and sales deed. MOU is a document which is not legally binding, but agreement to sell and sales deed are the types of documents which are legally binding upon parties who are entering into the sale transaction. What words and what words, typical words you should use in all these documents? Let's see. So it's a very technical point. As we are talking about drafting, it is very important that you use these words. So here, as you can see, the first sentence says that if you want to legalize the agreement, if you want to make sure that the parties are bound to each other under the law, and they have legally binding clauses mentioned in the agreement, if you want to mention such type of clauses, it is very very important that you use the word shall instead of maybe. You should use the words would be instead of can be, should be instead of might be, and use the word shall instead of can be. So here I will tell you the difference between shall and can. So can is some kind of, if I say that I can enter into an agreement, I can enter into an agreement, as in I have the option to enter into an agreement or not. So there is no obligatory promise on my side whether I should enter into an agreement or not. But whereas I say that I shall enter into an agreement, shall, the use of the word shall will make sure that it is obligatory on my side that I enter into an agreement. We shall, if there is any dispute arising between the parties can go to arbitration. So here it's a mere possibility, but it is not very obligatory on the part of the parties that they should go to the arbitration. They have the option, that is, they can go to arbitration. Whereas if you put like this, if there any dispute arises between both the parties shall go to the arbitration. Shall will make sure that they are legally bound to go to arbitration for any reason whatsoever. So obviously, if you want to legally bind the contract, you should use the word shall, would be, should be, shall, instead of maybe, can be, might be, and can be. Okay. So the MOU will never comprise of words such as shall or would be, So in that way, because in MOU, there is an option that the parties can rescind the contract without having the legal implications on their own side. So yes, these are the words that you should use, and these are the basics to be used in in an agreement. All right. So these were the basics of how an agreement should be drafted. So now let's come to gift deed, of course. So basics we have completed. There are 4 parts of the agreement. First is the recitals. First is the preamble, recitals, clauses, operative clauses, boilerplate clauses, and then the last one is the signing and sealing part. Signing and sealing part is nothing but the parties sign, they put their thumb impression, then they put their photographs, they attach their Aadhaar cards, PAN cards, and then that entire document is then going to get registered or notarized. Whatever the case may be, we will discuss that further. So this was the part of the sale transaction, which can happen in the pattern, which is then again followed in other deeds and documents as well. So now you know the basic pattern, what is to be followed. Now comes the other part, that is the gift deed. Of course, we shall discuss the important aspects as to what should be included in a gift deed. It is, first of all, it is without any consideration. It is made voluntarily without any coercion, undue influence, misrepresentation, or any mental harassment or mental pressure. This is done without any such kind of thing. So you should mention all these words in your draft. It is done voluntarily and with free consent. These 2 words should come. And also the most important thing is that it is without consideration. So a gift deed draft should always should always comprise of these 2 words. Of course, there are what kind of parties in a gift deed? Donor and donee, the person who is going to donate his property to the donee who is going to accept the property. It is also very important to make sure that why such gift deed is being executed, or why such property is going to be transferred to some other person's name. Why? Because it is out of natural love and affection towards that other person. Is the reason why the donor is going to donate the property to the donee. So this word, that so and so property is being transferred to so and so donee out of natural love and affection for donee, and that is why this property is being transferred voluntarily without any consideration, with free consent, and without any undue influence. So these words are very, very important to be included in a gift deed transfer. Gift deed can be done of a movable property as well as of an immovable property. And yes, and the acceptance is very important. So again, in the draft, you should also include that it is hereby agreed between donor and donee that donee is accepting this gift. Unless the gift is accepted, the gift cannot be transferred, as in the gift cannot be complete according to section 123 of Immovable Property, according to the TOPA Act. All right. One thing I missed actually, the things which we are discussing is all pertaining to immovable property. If an immovable property which cannot be moved is being transferred from one person to another person, it is always governed by the Transfer of Property Act. And if a movable property is getting transferred from one person to another person's name, then the SOGA Act will come into existence, that is the Sales of Goods Act. All right. So since we are discussing about the immovable property, the TOPA Act has to be read thoroughly. And unless you do not know this act, Transfer Property Act, you cannot draft any document. So before drafting, you should know the law. And after knowing the law, it is very easy for any legal draftsman to draft the entire thing. Again, it is not very important. It is not necessary to use very high-fi legal words. It is very important to use clear and specific and simple words so that the entire language and the tone of the document is very easy to understand. So we have completed the sale deed and the gift deed. What are the important aspects? Then comes the relinquishment deed and release deed. All right. So I don't have a slide for release deed, but through this relinquishment deed, you can understand what a release deed and what a gift deed is all about. All right. So relinquishment deed is a very most common method through which you can release your rights, you can surrender your rights, and because of your release of your rights, the other person in whose favor the rights have been are being released is now the owner of a bigger size of the property. So over here you can see an old man. Okay, so this old man has got a property, a self-acquired property. He has got two legal heirs. So here you can find a boy who is legal heir one, and you can see a girl who is a legal heir two. Now this person, this old man, he dies. Okay, so his property is now going to be transferred to legal heir one and legal heir two. Why? Because they are the rightful legal heirs of this old person. So in that draft, you should mention that who are the rightful legal owners, who are the rightful legal heirs of this old man. So here what happens is, since we're talking about the relinquishment deed, this boy who's a legal heir one, he's not having any interest in that self-acquired property of that old man. Okay, for the old man, it's a self-acquired property, but for the legal heirs, the property is inherited property, as in it is acquired by their ancestors or by their elders. So now, since the old man is no more, the property will be considered as the inherited property for whom? For legal heir one and legal heir two. So here the legal heir one says that I don't have any interest in the property. I want to surrender. I want to give up my rights in favor of legal heir two. So in this way, a relinquishment deed is then executed. So you should use the words surrender or give up or having no interest in the rights, title, or interest of the property should always be mentioned in that draft. So, and of course, the property should be specifically mentioned that it is an inherited property. So it is very important the property should be an inherited property, and you mention the word inherited in this case. And you should mention the word legal heirs, inherited property, and the rightful legal owners. So these are the kind of words that you should include in the relinquishment deed. And then accordingly, the relinquishment deed is being executed between the legal heir one and legal heir two. So if we change the scenario and we say that this nurse is also interested in that property, can the legal heir one release or relinquish his rights in favor of this nurse? Of course not, because the nurse is not one of the legal heirs of this old man. It is very important that if you are executing a relinquishment deed, it is very important that the parties are co-owners of that property or the rightful legal heirs of that property. So if this person, if the legal heir one, the boy wants to give the property, give his part of the property, give his share of the property to this nurse, he will give the property to the nurse and not execute a relinquishment deed or a release deed. So if the property is not an inherited property, and if you want to give that property, if you want to transfer that property to some other person, it is very important that you give the property. All right. So in relinquishment deed, the property will always be inherited property. But if you want to transfer a property which is not an inherited property, which is a self-acquired property, then in that case, you should execute a gift deed. Okay. So if you want to transfer a property in a third person's name, which is a self-acquired property and not an inherited, deed will be executed. Or even if you want to transfer an inherited property which is on your name to some other person's name who is a third party, who is not from your own family, then again you should have to execute a gift deed and not a relinquishment deed and not a release deed. So this was all about the gift deed and relinquishment deed. You should be very specific of the words which you use in your draft. It is very important. All right. So now there comes the most common agreements known as the legal license agreement and lease agreement. Has anyone executed such type of agreement during their life? Have you? Anyone? So, these are very common type of agreements that you must have executed in your life. Legal license agreement and lease agreements. There is a huge difference between the two. Both these agreements come under the conveyance deed only, but there is only one agreement which facilitates the transfer of property. What is the facilitate? What does facilitate mean? That is, the property is transferred to some other person's name, not name entirely. I'll tell you what is the difference. In the case of lease, the property can be transferred, but in the case of leave license agreement, there is no transfer of property. Okay, so both these agreements do involve these kinds of acts. So if you are dealing into leave license agreement or lease agreements, or the previous agreements also, these are the acts which you should read before you execute any such type of conveyance deed. Rent Control Act is specifically for the lease and the leave license agreement. But if you're executing any gift deed, relinquishment deed, release deed, or a sale deed, Transfer Property Act is there by default. And you should also consider Registration Act and the State Stamp Act to be two of the most important laws when you are facilitating any kind of transfer through such kind of agreements. Yes, so leave license agreement is for a specific period. It can be for less than 11 months. It can be more than 11 months. It can be for 60 months as well, and it can also be more than 60 months. So recently on my YouTube channel, Studio Legal, I have uploaded a video for leave license agreement and the difference between the leave license agreement and lease. So I'll just tell you the important parts of what these agreements comprise of. First of all, the owner of the property, as again I said in the preamble, you should always have the date, you should always have the place of the agreement, you should always have the name of the parties. So in case of legal license agreement, the parties will be called as licensor and licensee, because here the licensor is a person who is providing a license, who is granting a license to the licensee in order to occupy a place for a certain period of time, which can be less than 11 months, which can be more than 11 months, and which can be more than 60 months as well as less than 60 months. Why am I specifying these things? Because each period has got a specific importance in terms of law. All right. So the specific period should be mentioned. If I'm saying that today is 1st January, so for first 11 months, the leave license agreement is going to get registered. According to the period of leave license agreement, the stamp duty is calculated. All right. So since we have discussed what are these documents, there is always an important part, the second most important part, which is what? The execution of the document. So when we discuss about the execution of the document, we will discuss what is the meaning of stamp duty and what is the meaning of registration fees. So if you are executing a leave license agreement, it is very important to specify the period, and according to the period, the stamp duty and the registration fees will be calculated. So leave license agreement and lease period should be for a definite period. It should be again certain kind of compensation which is received from the licensee towards the licensee, obviously towards the licensor. Obviously is the rent amount, kitna rent aapko pay karna hai, wo bhi aap isme mention karoge hi. And again, it should be between specific person. It should be between specific person, specific period, for a specific property, and for a specific consideration amount. All right, so this is the difference. In lease, the interest is created. Whose interest is created? The tenant's interest is created. The parties which are involved in the lease are basically known as the owner and the tenant, and the parties which are involved in the leave license agreement are known as the licensor and the licensee. All right. So in lease, the interest is created. Why am I telling you all these things? Because it is very important that you mention all these things into your agreement. That is, a drafting part is very important. The difference is that when the lease period is going on, I'm talking about the lease period, the lease are always for long years, from 33 years to 99 years, from infinite period. So in this case, it is very important that the tenant is not evicted. So in that case, in the case of lease, the interest is created. Whose interest is created? The tenant's interest is created. So if the owner, let's say there is a land and the land is being leased to a bank. So there is a land and the land is being leased to a bank for a period of 33 years. And now this land owner wants to sell his land. So here the permission of the tenant is required. If the tenant says no, that I want to complete my 33 years of period of lease and then only I will be evicted, that has to be followed, because this is the interest which is created of the tenant on that particular lease. So lease is very important. but that is not in the case of leave license agreement. Even if the leave license period is going on, there is a right on the part of the owner to sell the property, even if the agreement period is going on. In case of leave license agreement, only that the draft should mention that if the licensee is going to get evicted, he should get 2 months prior notice or 1 month prior notice. So if he gets 1 month prior notice or 2 months prior notice before the period gets ended, before the actual period of the agreement gets ended, then also the person can be evicted. Who can be evicted? The licensee can be evicted before the period is over, before the actual period is over. So here there's a lot of difference between lease and leave license agreement, and most of the dispute happen only on this basis that we thought it was a lease, but now this agreement is getting considered to be leave license agreement. This is the ground on the basis of which there is a dispute happening between the two people, where the licensee is not ready to evict the premises, saying that it was a lease, and the owner says that it wasn't a lease, it was a leave license period, it was a leave license agreement. So what is important on the part of the lawyer? On the part of the lawyer, it is very important to specify whether it is a lease or whether it is a leave license agreement, whether the interest is created, whether the interest is not created, and what are the rights of the owner and what are the rights of tenant, or what are the rights of the licensor and what are the rights of the licensee. So as a legal draftsman, you should be clear whether it is a lease and whether it is a leave license agreement. All right. As I said, the leave license agreement can be more than 60 months. It can be for years also. Again, the nature, the intention of the parties is very important to consider whether it is a lease or leave license agreement. All right, so I think I've spoken a lot now regarding drafting. So what we started with the parts of the agreement. There are 4 parts of the agreement: preamble, recitals, clauses, and then the signing and sealing part. Then we spoke about the type of conveyance deed, and then we discussed on each for each of the conveyance deeds. So we spoke about the sales transaction, then the sale deed, the agreement to sell, the MOUs, gift deed. Then we spoke about the relinquishment deed, release deed, and then now lease and leave license agreement. Or there was okay. So if you have any confusion, you can always mention the chat box. If you have any confusion regarding the drafting part or what is the entire agreement or anything, any doubts, you can put up in the chat box. All right. So now let's go to the execution part. So as I said that these conveyance deed must be in writing. It is not at all okay. So if we say that we have a deal, let's do the handshake. It is good, but it is not enough. So it is very important to reduce your discussion into writing. So when you reduce your discussion into writing, it is known as a written agreement. And to give effect to this written agreement, it is very, very important that you register this document according to the Transfer of Property Act, according to the provisions of the Registration Act 1908 and also the Indian Stamp Act, which is again read with the State Stamp Act. All right, the Stamp Act, the stamp duty registration piece is very important in this scenario. So if you want to execute a sales deed, if you want to execute a gift deed or a relinquishment deed, release deed, lease or leave a license, it is very, very important according to the section 17 of the Registration Act that you compulsorily register these documents before the sub-registrar's office where the property is located or situated. All right. So as I spoke, Registration Act has to be followed by all states and the Indian Stamp Act has to be followed. Every state, as in if I stay in Maharashtra, Maharashtra has got some different Stamp Act. If I stay in Delhi, Delhi has got Delhi Stamp Act, Rajasthan Stamp Act, Gujarat Stamp Act. Every state has got different stamp acts and rules and regulations are different. Why is it so? Because every place has got its own value. The property has got its own value. So every place, every type of property is different, and accordingly, the stamp duty rates and the registration fees is charged. So it is very important, first of all, to decide where are you located. If I am located in Bandra, or if I'm located in Goregaon or Malad, I should know where my property is located, where are the parties located, and accordingly, the stamp duty and registration fees will be calculated. Also, it is very important that what kind of relation is there between both the parties. If I am gifting a property to my child, then the stamp duty rates will be different. If I'm gifting my property to my mother, then the stamp duty rates will be different. If I'm gifting my property to some other person, as in some of my friends, then the stamp duty rate will be different. And accordingly, the registration fees will also be charged. Now, we have spoken a lot about stamp duty and registration fees. Now, let's find out what is the meaning of these two taxes. We have heard about income tax, we have heard about stamp duty rates, and we have heard about registration fees. All these three things are different. Income tax is different. Income tax is where you have acquired the property, and what type of taxes um, will be you would be liable to pay. That is all different. What we as lawyers, what we are concerned as, we are concerned about the stamp duty rates and registration fees. Once at the time when the property is getting transferred, we should always know what is these two things. Stamp duty is nothing but stamp duty is paid on the document. What type of document? The document which facilitates the transfer. Now we have discussed a lot about transfer. Which are the documents which facilitate the transfer? Of course, the conveyance deeds, and the stamp duty is paid upon all these conveyance deeds. That is gift deed, sale deed, etc. Because it is facilitating the transfer of a property, and it is very important to pay the stamp duty to the government on such type of transfer. All right. So then what is the meaning of registration fees? We're already paying to the government. Why to pay registration fees then? So since I spoke about the sub-registrar's office, the sub-registrar's office is the place where these documents are going to be registered. So of course, if there is an office and they are going to facilitate some procedure, they are going to facilitate a process of registration, they are going to demand fees. And therefore, this registration fees is paid for those sub-registrar's office and those people who are going to facilitate the process of this transfer, process of registration. And therefore, the stamp duty and registration fees are the important payments that you need to pay while you transfer the fees. Okay, so as I said, you have to really read the Transfer Property Act. You have to read Registration Act, Section 17. Then you have to read the Indian Stamp Act, and then you have to read Maharashtra Stamp Act, the schedule in which the rates of the stamp duties are written. All right. So that schedule is very important. In that, everything is written. If you want to transfer any immovable property in terms of sale, gift, will, release deed, relinquishment deed, all the rates are given in Maharashtra Stamp Act if you belong to Maharashtra, or any respective state act where the respective states which you belong to. All right. And registration fees also will comprise of all these things. So while you transfer, all these acts should be in your mind. You should always refer these acts. Okay, so as I said, the stamp duty will depend upon the kind of transfer you're doing. As in, the relation between two people is very important. So Article 25 will be Article 25 of Maharashtra Stamp Act. Article 36, 36A will be for the release deed, and will be for legal license agreement. Article 34 will be for the gift deed. So these are the articles where you can find the stamp duty rates in Maharashtra Stamp Act. So if I am going to transfer, if I'm going to sell the property, 5% conveyance fee or 3% conveyance fee is applicable on the sale transaction. Kitni stamp duty lagegi? So that's 5% or 3% according to the urban and the rural areas. Then if you're gifting the property, then according to Article 34, the stamp duty rates are applicable. And if you want to lease out the property, or if you want to rent out the property under legal license agreement, then you should see Article 36 or 36A. So this was all about the stamp duty and registration fees. When you go for the sub-registrar's office, you have to take an online appointment. You have to pay the document handling charges fee. Then you have to call the parties to the sub-registrar's office. You have to get their Aadhaar card, PAN card, photo, and then you have to prepare the document, and that document will be then registered with the sub-registrar's office. Be it anything, be it any conveyance deed, you have to register these documents. All right. So this was it about today. If you want to ask any doubts, you can just raise your hand.
Hi, Mohini. So it's been a wonderful lecture.
Yeah.
I have one question which is slightly deviating from what we've learned here so far. So a very important aspect of agreements is a development agreement. My question is divided in two parts. The first one is,
Hmm.
are there any particular statutes or relevant sections or judgments that dictate the creation of a development agreement? And my
Hmm.
second sub question would be, are there
Hmm.
any legal implications of an irrevocable consent?
So the development agreement, as in, can you give me some example of what kind of development agreement you're talking about? Are you talking about certain kind of building that is going to get constructed, and that kind of development agreement are you talking about? Okay, so we have discussed is the conveyance part where the property is going to get transferred. Irrevocable consent is that once you have transferred the property, you can't take it back. For example, if I say that I'm gifting a property to my child or to one of my friends, so it is very important that whatever consent I'm giving, it is an irrevocable consent that is without any conditions. So once I've transferred, I can't take it back. That's what you're asking about. Then yes, all the transfers should be unconditional transfers. And if you are putting any conditions on that, then it should not be at the will of the transferor. If you want to put any conditions, you can, but it should not be on your will. And then only it will be an irrevocable consent. So once you have given the property, you can't take it back. If the agreement to sell is made in the form of MOU, that is the title is MOU, but every recital and clause are completely like agreement to sell. In that case, it is legally binding. Yes, thank you for asking this question. This is the most common question which we get, and yes, it will be a legally binding agreement. As I said, it is not important. It is not important to give importance to the title of the document. If the title of the document says that MOU, it is an MOU. It is not important that you rely that it is legal. It is not legally binding. The intention of the parties will always be found out through the draft of the agreement. If you have included the words such as shall, if you have included the clauses such as dispute resolution or indemnity, in such cases, it will be an agreement to sell and it will not be considered as MOU. It will be a legally binding MOU and you can specifically enforce that MOU. Is it mandatory to register a gift deed? What if a gift deed of immovable property not registered? Can it be valid by subsequent payment of stamp duty by Yatin Jadhav? It cannot be ratified. It has to be complete. So if the donor and the donee have executed a document known as gift deed, so you have to mandatorily register it if the gift is for some immovable property. If it is for some movable property, it need not be registered. But if you want to then subsequently pay the stamp duty, according to the book, it says that yes, you can pay the stamp duty later on. But it is better if you are registering a gift, if you are executing a gift deed, you have to register it on the spot so that the transfer will be then complete. Because in society they require that the gift deed should be registered. So if you just put a piece of paper and say that I'm going to I'm going to donate so and so property to so and so person, so and so flat is getting transferred to the other person, then the society will demand a registered gift deed. Yeah. Is there anything different in procedure of buying a property from government agencies like SIDCO or MADA? My Shrikant, yes, there is a whole lot of different procedure. And if you are transferring a property from MADA, in MADA, the procedure is totally different. And if you are transferring a property of a society, the procedure is different. Okay, so there is two kind of procedure: the first half and the second half. First half is of course the sale deed or the agreement to sell. So according to Maharashtra Stamp Act, agreement to sell is also considered to be a conveyance deed only. So if agreement to sell is executed, it has to be registered with the sub registrar. And the subsequent part will be the submission of documents to the MHADA authorities, whether it is affidavit, indemnity bond, or whatever the title of the property is. In the same way, it is then followed in the society as well. So, of course, the procedure is different. That the types of documents also are different. After agreement with builder, stamp duty is paid. But when person want loan from bank, they want to make mortgage deed, stamp duty and registration fees is correct. Or bank is taking extra money by Supriya. Okay, okay, so if you are depositing your title deeds to the bank, there is certain kind of stamp duty which has to be paid. So yes, you need to pay the stamp duty. You don't need to pay the stamp duty again on the conveyance part. But if you are mortgaging your property and if you're submitting the title deeds, then the certain kind of stamp duty is charged, which yeah, you have to pay stamp duty and registration fees because every equitable mortgage or such kind of documents are registered with the sub registrar. If the stamp duty and registration of gift deed is not paid, is there any limitation period for paying the stamp duty subsequently? Not that I'm aware of. You have to read the Transfer of Property Act, but in order to complete the transfer, you have to pay the stamp duty and registration fees. Okay, so if you want to create any dispute, you have a limitation period of 3 years. So for the gift deed, for relinquishment deed, for leave and license agreement, I have already uploaded detailed videos on YouTube. So if you want to check out those videos, you can check out those videos. Almost all your doubts, whichever you have asked, will be complete in those lectures. If you have any doubt, you can speak further.
Mohini, I have 2 questions with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 1 is, can a sale deed be cancelled?
Sale deed can only be cancelled in the case where it is not registered or the transfer is not complete. Of course, you can cancel this sale deed. And then it also depends upon the draft which you have made, whether the person who has paid the amount is returnable or not. Because in agreement to sell, mostly to safeguard your property, yes, so the sale deed can be cancelled. And if you have paid the stamp duty, then you can always apply online for the refund of the stamp duty. Yes.
Okay, and the second question is, what is the difference between relinquishment deed and gift deed?
Okay, it's a very interesting question where mostly people are confused. As I said, if you are transferring an inherited property to your, as I took an example of the old man. So remember, there were 2 legal heirs, both were brothers and sisters, and they both were very much entitled to the inherited property of whom? The old man. So the old man has now left behind one property, which is now to be divided amongst legal heir 1 and legal heir 2. So in this case, if legal heir 1 is not interested in that property, he will execute a relinquishment deed in favor of whom? The legal heir 2, saying that I don't have any interest in this property. I give up. I surrender my rights in favor of the legal heir 2. So in this case, where the property is an inherited one, not a self-acquired property, in this case, relinquishment deed will be executed. But if I say that if that inherited property has to be transferred to some other person, who is not a relative of legal heir 1 and legal heir 2, in that case, a gift deed has to be executed and not a relinquishment deed. So that is the difference. So if the relinquishment deed will only be executed amongst the co-owners, amongst the legal heirs. And if you want to give that property to some other person, so in that case, it will be a gift deed. Also, there is another difference. If I have one property which I have bought in Mumbai, I want to give that property to some other person. All right. It is not an inherited property. It is a self-acquired property. So in this case, relinquishment deed will not be executed. In this case, gift deed will be executed. So always we have to remember that in relinquishment deed, it is always the inherited property. But in gift deed, it is always a self-acquired property or any property which you have purchased, or you are the joint owner where you have purchased the property during your lifetime, which is not an inherited property. So this is the difference. Thank you very much for inviting. It was a very good session for me also. I think I gained a lot of knowledge while I was researching on all these things. So I really like when I get a chance to share my knowledge to other people. So it was a very enjoyable session for me. I hope others also got some kind of, it's beneficial for others as well.
Definitely, it was.
Yeah. So thank you for having me.